All right, well, John, let's get right into it. You are super pro on cyber intelligence, and I watched a talk that you gave, and you talked about a small company that had a scammer get into their accounting system and sit there for a year observing. And then what happened after that was totally unbelievable. Is this typical stuff? And what's the dark web doing out there? And just tell us that story.
Yeah, it's always funny, right? Because you hit the nail on the head before. So many small businesses go, I'm too small. They're only after the big corporates. They won't worry about me. And then all of a sudden you have like this incident where they infiltrated their systems. They sat there for many, many months, did nothing, just set up multiple backdoor entries, understood, the inner workings. So they were in their CRMs, they were in their finance systems and all of that. And in this case, they sent out close to, I think it was around about 400 plus thousand in invoices, and about just shy of 50 grand. So, it was a little over 10% of the invoices got paid. So this was, or this one example was a tree lopping company, like an arborist. So these guys here, and the only reason they found out about it was because their clients rang them up going, hey, I paid that invoice like 3 weeks ago. When are you coming out to cut down these trees? From that. So that was crazy. Another similar example was a law firm where exactly the same process. And she was a family lawyer, so did a lot with divorces. So obviously there's heightened tension in those types of situations anyway. And all they did was change the trust account details of where the money was being paid. So, husband or wife was putting balances in for divorce settlements and legal fees into a trust account. And it was the hackers trust account. So they caught it with about 30 grand. And one of my personal favorites was a not I wouldn't say an old lady or anything like that, but she just wasn't used to doing things, and she was in the US. And the IRS reached out to her by phone, right? And they literally had her that scared that she walked into a bank and did a transfer from one bank account to another bank account, which was the hacker's bank account, for about, 25, 30 grand there as well, whilst they were on the phone with her. And the instructions were, make sure you put your phone in the pocket, because the banks will probably get a bit wary about it. And it's these things, like everyone goes like, how stupid was this person? But yes, that comes into it, but you hear these things all the time. If you're that caught up emotionally and you're just like, oh, I'm not, I'm going to get this fine or whatever it might be, people just react differently. WhatsApp is a great one as well. We hear it all the time of little, $100 to $500 transactions that happen through WhatsApp. The usual, hey, mum, I left my wallet at home, or I've had to cancel my credit cards. Can you transfer me a couple of $100? I'm at the supermarkets now. I've got to pay for blah, blah, blah. And mum or dad does it instantly. So they're sort of like all of these, we've all probably heard the stories, right? Of people that are doing this. But when it comes to small businesses, or business in particular, really it comes down to your data, right? And like, I know I've worked bloody hard to build a business, to build that database, to create that asset, continue to put all that time, energy, and effort in, long days, long hours, and all of these things. And to think that one little cheeky bugger could come in and destroy it all is not very appetizing from that perspective. So the biggest thing that I see for small businesses is, if you have a database, once again, whether you're using Keep, another type of CRM, whether you're just using it on Xero or QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet, right? If you're capturing client data, there is value there, right? You've put energy and effort into that. And so yes, we are worried about our own business and being infiltrated within our own business and our data being leaked out there. But not more importantly, but on top of that, it's the brand reputation, And this can be the killer. Like this can be something that will literally shut your business down. Imagine for a moment, like these couple of scenarios, someone's infiltrated you, they've got access to your data, and then all of a sudden they've run a phishing campaign because they got access through your data, ran that through to your client base or supplier base. And then the next thing you know, it's all tied back to you. And you know, your business is gone. Like ransom, the ransom never even has to be made, right? From a monetary perspective, it's literally, we've just now got access to your systems, and we're just going to start infiltrating or acting as you to send information out to your database and just expose them. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's like the life cycle of hacking. It just keeps going. Where they expose you, they drive through, they expose somebody else that clicks that link, exposes through. So it's always fun. But the biggest challenge with small businesses is, she will be right, mate. It will never happen to me. So we hear it all the time, and it will. Yeah.
Fallon and I had something crazy happen where, and we had it happen twice, where somebody was messaging her to say, "Oh, hey, it's saying there to me that I can't remember the exact details. I'm getting on a plane. I'm doing a webinar in an hour or two. Could you go out and get a bunch of like 10 gift cards, something like that. Send the info over to me so I can give these away at the webinar." And Fallon's like, "This seems weird," which was correct.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to ask her to spend money for the company. That's crazy town, maybe $10 to buy a book or something, but not something like that. And so she asked a clever question that was like a personal question that, somebody's not going to know the answer to, something she did last weekend, something like that. And it happened a couple times, and we had to stop and think about what we were doing at the company. And just, I'm like, what if that person would have reached out to someone else on the team? Would that person have realized it? And when you ran this report on Kokoro marketing, and you showed stuff that you found on the dark web, which totally shocked me.
Yeah, the usernames and passwords are out there, and like in that type of scenario, that happens. Like, not many people talk about it, but it happens so frequently. And people go, like, how do they know that, like, I'm on a plane, or I've left the country, or I've done this? And it's because they're in systems, right? They've got access. And this is what I mean, that they can sit there and don't do anything, but they've got these little flags that pop up through that. And it might not necessarily be that they're in your system, but they could be in a supply system. So for example, it could be in, like a toll provider. So if you've gone through driving through roads and your tolls ticked off or something like that, they might be in that toll provider. And then they might have some matching stuff on the back end and go, "Oh, okay, well, we know that you're away right now, or you're traveling. Great, let's infiltrate there." Or they've noticed that, you've booked a flight. So your flight provider, they've got the dates, all of those. So it could be from the airline that you're with. It could be with the bank that you're banking with. There's all of these different facets, and it's just a massive data gathering exercise. And this is why I always say it's uncanny, the similarities between, like, think of like a marketing agency where they're helping small businesses build their database, create these lead magnets and lead funnels to drive conversations, leads, sales, and all of that. And it's literally very similar processes that the bad guys are doing, the hackers, but they're doing it for evil, right? But it's the same process. Like that, they're reaching out there to drive leads, to capture data that they can put through a funnel to get people to click that link. All we want you to do is to click that link, and then now we've got access. And before you even find out we've got access, because people go, "Well, I'll just change passwords," and they're shut out. No. They've set up multiple backdoor entries. So yeah, it's crazy things that can happen.
You told about a client you worked with that the company was about $1 million. So not a giant company, but nonetheless, you talked about a $38,000 ransom they had to pay to get their data back. And I was just shocked that a company that size would be at risk.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like it's like the ransom sort of the end result. Like if you get to that ransom stage, you know that usually there's some serious stuff that's gone down. Like, you really, number one, you never want to pay the ransom. That's where you actually want to engage the Liam Neesons from Taken. You want to engage those people, but in the cyber intelligence space. They're not cheap. It's from a remediation perspective, they're not cheap, but depending on, certain factors, because the challenge with paying the ransom is once you've paid, it's like governments, the public line of we never pay ransoms, and all of that. And the reason behind that is because as soon as you've paid, it doesn't mean that they're going to give you all of the data back anyway. And even if they do, once again, they've set up multiple backdoor entries, and then you're on the list of someone who will pay. So fantastic. If we can get $500 or 10 grand or whatever out of you, we know we can get more.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is, there's all of those aspects there. So it's sort of like, the reality is nowadays is, the chances of your data being, leaked, if you like, and sold on the dark web, and that's the area that we specialize in, is pretty darn high, right? Like it's going to happen at some point. That's sort of the way you got to look at it. So what we're seeing now is, early detection is the new prevention, right? And that's sort of what you've got to look at. We know at some point our data is going to be leaked, our passwords, our personal identification information, date of birth, social security numbers, all of that, just depending on the breach that's happened. Once again, whether it was you or somebody that you've got data with, that information is going to be leaked at a point, right? So it's then about how do we identify when that happens early enough in the piece so that we can get on top of these things. So a couple of little things, just like from a tip perspective, never save passwords in browser. Okay, so if you're using Google Chrome and it says save to Chrome or save to Safari or save to Keychain and things like that, never save those passwords in browser. Biggest thing. So there's a technique called stealer logs. And for example, we can run a report on like a stealer log scenario, and if they get access to that keychain in browser, they don't just get the one password, they get all of the passwords that you have saved in there through one little hack, right? So it can be quite devastating from that side. So that's the big one. The standard one is always, think before you click. Like, have a look at the URL. They call it typo squatting, so they'll go and buy like, I don't know, let's say Verizon.com, for example. They might, and I'm not saying that they've been hacked or anything like that, but they might change one character or slightly tweak a character or change the extension of that or put like a subdomain in front of it, or, all of these different little bits and pieces. So, that typo squatting scenario is, is particularly in the financial institutions, is pretty terrifying. And unfortunately, I look at, unfortunately, when they do a lot of those things, they don't invest the time in making the websites look identical to the company. So I know, Cindy, we've spoken about this with Keep before. Like if I was going to be a bad guy and try and steal information from Keep, I would literally replicate the login screen to the nth degree. And I'd redirect people to my dodgy login screen. And when they put in their user credentials, I would just refresh them and redirect them straight back to the actual login screen. And they'll probably be like, oh, that was weird. Never even think about it. Or I would redirect them through to, hey, we've had an issue with your billing. We need you to update your credit card. But once again, have it look pretty good, and then
Oh my
capture all of that, and
gosh.
away we go.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, it's
So what
some
do we
it's
do? What do we do as regular
yeah.
people?
So what you don't do is you don't dig a hole and put your head in it and just
Right,
forget about
right.
things. Yeah, yeah. So the key is I'm going to make a big assumption, right, that you are all investing in some form of best practice cybersecurity. So what I mean from that perspective is you might have like a Norton antivirus or a Trend Micro, or you work with a managed service provider, and they've got the security perspective sorted. Okay, so there's cybersecurity and then there's cyber intelligence, right? So it's really important to understand the distinction between the two. Cybersecurity is like your state and federal police. Okay, so they secure what's within the border. Okay, so if you think about your hardware and all of that, they secure what's in the border there. They're looking for known malware, all of the bits and pieces that the hackers are trying to put there. So they're looking at what's known and trying to protect your border. From an cyber intelligence perspective, think of like intelligence agencies, CIA, ASIO, ASIS here in Australia, all of that. We're looking at what's beyond the border. We're looking at future potential threats that nothing might not have happened yet, but these are threats that are identified. So we're looking outside of the wire, outside of the border of your hardware, your systems. And what we're looking for there is primarily credential monitoring. Okay, that's like our foundational piece is looking at if you think you've got your business email domain or domains from that perspective, we're looking for anything associated with that domain and the strings associated. So it could be, email addresses, passwords, personal identificational information, and we want to notify you as soon as we've identified. Essentially, we want to notify you that, hey, there has been this credential specifically, and potentially this password has now been sold. Whether it's sold for the first time or sold again out on the dark web, do something about it, right? Throw it up your food chain, make sure you've changed your passwords, all of these little base level points, but it's notifying you ahead of time so that you can ideally prevent ahead of time a future disaster happening from there. So as an example, Cindy, as you know, we ran before the call, just did some research on those who have registered to attend. And so there's a couple of outliers as far as credentials that are exposed and up for sale right now on the dark web. So the most we saw from people was about 260 credentials. So that's not one individual.
260 for a company.
Yeah.
260
for a company. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and this is a historical
Of people
view, so
here.
this is live, of live data going back a couple of years. Yeah. So that's pretty high. On, we had others that were like 67, 29, 1, 0, 5. I'm reading off my list. 82, 23, 15, 3, 29, 19. There's the 121. So there's a whole bunch. Everyone's got.
What did you see without revealing somebody's, like giving away somebody's secrets? What did you see?
So we could see all of essentially the team members, if you like, and the email addresses. So if you had multiple team members, current or past, right, team member credentials there. There was a bunch of identificational information. So some people would have like date of birth. Some people might have credit card details, address information, all of that type of information. But the big one is the passwords. So for example, and like if I mention someone's password, don't react or anything like that and go, oh, that's mine or anything. But like people who had passwords with like the @ symbol, capital DUD, starting with that, or hawk, or love. I think it would be Tiger, TIGE, and then we've redacted the rest. Hawk is there, which is another one. Dina, SK61. So there's all of these different passwords that we can see, and that's
on
just
the call might be recognizing their own passwords right now, is what you're saying.
Potentially,
Maybe.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They may or may not be, but yeah, that's just, I've just picked a singular password. Yeah, it like if it's
Well,
freaking you
when
out a
you
little
did
bit,
it for
it could be.
us, you did it
Yeah.
for Kokoro, and it did reveal a bunch of passwords. Now, most of them to me looked like things that we'd use in the past, but nonetheless, you got a hold of them. And you also revealed that there were a bunch of team members that didn't exist on Team Kokoro that were trying to log in and do different things, which completely freaked me out when I saw that.
Yeah, so they might have set up a different email address, or yeah. So there's a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of things. I remember the funniest one, and it's not really funny, was I was speaking to a financial advisor firm, and I was on the it was a husband and wife director team, and I was on a call like this with them, and we mentioned a couple of passwords, and their faces went white, and then they were just horrified, because they were like, they looked at each other and they're like, that is the password that we use for our bank accounts. It's the same email address. It was the same password that they used.
Oh,
They had, a reasonable stock and property portfolio to log into those
oh my
platforms.
gosh.
And they were like, thankfully they hadn't been breached or been ransomed or anything along those lines. But for them, it
Mm-hmm.
was like just this, um, mind-opening, thing of like, holy crap, we need to be so much more diligent than what we are.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to remember, like, technology, as we all know, AI and all of the machine learning and all of that, it's advancing like so quick. What took 5 hours, or for 5 years is now taken, 5 seconds essentially. So the
So,
bad guys are able to crack these passwords like tens of thousands, if not millions, in a matter of seconds, right? So you've really got to be thinking about your passwords. And there's new reports out now with the expansion of quantum computing and all of those things coming out. So if you're using
mm-hmm.
like LastPass or 1Password or Dashlane, like password managers, which, let's be clear, are great things to utilize.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're saying
I
now with
use
the
them.
advancements in, yeah, well, so do we, right? The
Yeah.
advancement in quantum computing, they're not even going to cut the mustard in the future. So the governments and, at B and other key players are looking at using lattice models. So instead of
Mm.
just a singular key, they're pulling from different
Oh,
areas and
interesting.
all of that. But one of the best ways to create a password nowadays, which is sort of counterintuitive to password managers, right? Yeah, the bad guys are the hackers. Yep. The one of the best ways to create a password is what they call like a long string text. So, like, I like
Yeah.
eating ice cream by the beach on Sundays, right? Now that's not a password of mine, but something like that, where it's
Yeah.
throw in a couple of characters and things like that, but it's a longer
Mm-hmm.
stretch of phrase. Something like that could, in the current environment, take 1 trillion years to crack, versus password, which will take not even a second. Yeah, so it's pretty
So
interesting.
we got to wrap. We're going to go to the speaker room so that you can ask all your questions in there, because I know there's a ton of questions. I don't know, what are the top one or two things we can do as just regular humans to protect ourselves? I heard, if I'm capturing data, if I have a company that captures any data, accounting data, CRM,
Yep.
anything, there's value. Never pay the ransom, never save my password in the browser. Credential monitoring is it. Long string text password. But what would be the top one or two things that we
Yeah,
should do
so
as
number one, you've got to have your security in check. So cybersecurity, you have to be doing that without a doubt. Number two, credential monitoring. So like what we're talking about, it's just a must nowadays, right? Credential monitoring from that perspective. And the easiest way to check if you have exposure is just to reach out to us from there. I can drop a link in if that's cool
that's
with
cool.
yourself, Cindy. Yeah. So
Absolutely.
there's a link there if you want to check. Just put in your details, and we'll come back to you and let you know if there's any exposure. And so they're the main two things. The other thing is you've just got to be diligent and be aware. Like, this is the number one the number one cause of cyber incidences is literally human error, right? It's over 90% of cyber incidences are caused by human error. That's you, me, your team, whatever it is. So you've got to be diligent, and which comes down to education.